It is important for all parties involved to understand the different roles in land use planning. Council sets the policy with advice from Planning Board, and does this through the adoption of the plan and bylaw. Regardless of which decisions are delegated to the Development Officer, Council always retains the authority to approve the adoption of or amendments to a plan and bylaw, and generally retains decision-making authority where the question is policy-based or discretionary. Planning Board is an advisory committee providing recommendations to Council. A basic set of duties are established under the Act, but most planning boards usually have a broader terms of reference and advise on planning matters generally, supported by staff. Planning Board can include members of the public. The CAO is sometimes tasked with the day-to-day duties such as receiving applications, while the Development Officer is a position filled by a Council appointment who generally has responsibility for simple or as-of-right decisions, including smaller subdivisions and issuing permits. The extent of their duties will depend on the municipality and the planning documents. Planners are generally engaged in the more complex projects, providing policy guidance and drafting, amending, and reviewing the planning documents. In some cases, the Development Officer and the planner are the same person, and in other cases, the CAO is also the Development Officer, but it is important to remember that each role involves different skill sets. Planners are specifically trained in accredited programs for the practice of land use planning. In PEI, professional planners are certified as registered professional planners, RPP, and are measured by standards established by a joint committee of all professional planning bodies across the country. You may also sometimes hear reference to a candidate. Those are individuals with the minimum degree requirements who are now in the experience gaining stage, similar to other professions. The authorities retained versus delegated to the Development Officer will differ from municipality to municipalities, but councils tend to retain the more discretionary, less administrative decisions such as large subdivisions, large commercial developments, variances, and conditional or discretionary uses. However, even with the retained authorities, councils should take care to be guided by technical expertise and advice in order to ensure that the decisions are being made in good faith and in compliance with the documents. It's important in the planning documents to be very clear on which decisions are being delegated, and to avoid statements such as having development officers refer matters to council when they are uncertain as to whether or not the application meets the requirements of the bylaw. For some best practice consideration, it's important for new planning authorities to be ready to hit the ground running and ready to receive applications. This includes retaining a planner, retaining and appointing a development officer, developing processes, and solidifying your administrative procedures. Make sure you have your forms and checklists ready and mapping and other data on hand. It's also important to be proactive in letting the community know what is coming, where to find information, how to apply, and how long it might take to receive a decision on the application. With regards to enforcement, as you set out your rules and standards, be clear on why you are regulating the thing you are regulating, and whether and how far you are willing to go to enforce those standards. Appeals are an inevitable component of land use planning, so it helps to be ready for them, including by setting aside funds for legal advice. The stronger and more robust your processes and decision-making, the better protected you will be. It's also important to set up good record-keeping systems, storing information over time on applications and decisions, including the technical information you might need in the future on the conditions associated with an approval, the specific nature of the approval, and any relevant details on the assessment that led to the decision. This information becomes critical over time as properties and structures change. Once you have the plan and bylaw in place and approved by the minister, you are ready to receive applications and make decisions regarding subdivision and development. During the development control stage, there will be points where the development officer coordinates with other municipal and provincial departments, including Parks and Rec, Public Works, Utility and Engineering, and provincially with Environment, Transportation, Public Safety, and so on. The subdivision approval process involves many different considerations, including the classification of the soil type, the site assessments, consideration of access, and coordinating with those provincial departments. Likewise, with the development permit applications, you're looking at the type of use, servicing, access, setbacks, and other items that need or require coordination. It's a good idea to refer to the Provincial Development Decisions Guide for information on the development assessment process. I will note that building permits are another stage altogether. In some municipalities, the development permit and building permits are considered concurrently, but in most municipalities, the council has entered into the agreement with the province to have the province administer the building code. Building permits deal with construction codes, however, so the focus shifts from where and why and involves different expertise and assessments. Typically, the development permit comes first, but in some cases there will likely be some back and forth coordinating between the province and the municipality. Both stages, the development permit and the building permit, involve different types of responsibilities and potential liabilities and involve different skill sets.
A frequent concern on the part of both municipalities new to planning as well as municipalities that have been involved in planning for a while is about how to address the cost of planning. Without a doubt, there are costs associated, and the municipal financial plan must address this, including budgeting for the skills and advice that you will need. Municipalities are not required to have these positions on staff. They do have the option to retain these individuals on an as-needed basis. The better the advice you get, the smoother the operations will be later on. And the better and clearer your processes, the smoother they will be, which means fewer problems to solve over time. Set fees at the appropriate level, reflecting the cost, or at least a portion of the costs, and not just a token amount, to offset the expenses associated with providing the service. Consider setting aside reserves in your financial plan for the 5-year review so that the costs don't only come due at that point in time. Likewise, set up a legal reserve and do dip into it to get the legal advice when needed. Other options for cost savings include sharing services.
The Planning Act does permit a joint planning board. What this means in essence is that you can pool the advisory resources of that committee. But the committee remains advisory and is best for areas of shared regional interest. All decisions return to the development officer or the individual council, however, meaning that many costs are not shared through a joint planning board. In particular, decisions such as adopting or amending planning documents must remain with each council. A shared services approach provides a greater opportunity to pool resources. This can take the form of a shared or regional planning commission or even a contract with a set firm. This approach would provide for more predictable costs and allows municipalities to jointly assemble the range of skills, such as planners, development officers, technicians, mapping, and enforcement, that they might not otherwise be able to afford on their own. In terms of considerations, municipalities would have to look at how to design the cost sharing and how to address considerations such as joint liability and governance. A written agreement would be critical, and the MGA requires a bylaw. As noted, municipalities are not required to have a development officer or planner on staff. They can contract on an as-needed basis, on a retainer basis, or even on a part-time basis. The option even exists to contract to another municipality with the capacity to take on additional work. Regardless of approach, the decisions vested in each council remain with each council, including policy decisions and adopting or amending the planning documents.